Very good Monday to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to the new working week edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is the 19th of May and it was a good weekend just going here on the channel. On Saturday I did a video. It was a European Outlook looking at the potential of the Monsoon oscillation becoming a lot more active over the East Indian Ocean maritime continent. That's potentially providing the kick that the atmosphere needs to see the changes that are going to take place towards the end of this week and the upcoming weekend. But so check that out. You can also check back the Global Weather Report live yesterday afternoon. I will leave a link in the description below today's video for that. And obviously, big week coming up here in the channel. Finalising my written summer forecast for 2025 for Europe, the Atlantic hurricane season forecast, and that will be released on Sunday the 25th. So coming up this Sunday will be the release of the 2025 summer forecast and hurricane season forecast as well. It's going to be a twofold live stream this upcoming weekend. There will be a link in the description below, probably from about midweek on for that this weekend. So lots of reason to stick around here on the channel. Unhyped, unbiased content, 6 days a week. Like I've said already, soon to be 7 days a week. The Tropical Outlook will return every Saturday coming up once we move into the month of June. But anyway, this is the latest off CDAS for the month so far up to Monday the 19th of May. You can see here distinct warmer than average across the UK and Ireland, cooler than average across Central and Eastern Europe. And the month of June is looking like this here off the ECM extended. Well, I say the month of June up until the 17th of June anyway. Temperature anomaly wise, this is globally what the ECM extended looks like. There is quite a large area of cool in this map, which is quite interesting. Through that first half of June, we've got the large swathes of Europe actually running average to below average, large swathes of Russia, Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asia, the maritime continent, Western Australia. Much of the lower 48 actually east of the Rockies is below average for the final 10 days or so of May and the first 17 days of June, which is quite interesting to see actually. And this is how Europe is looking off the ECMWF. So slightly above average for the UK, but the large swathes of mainland Europe average to slightly below average. In terms of rainfall for the same period here, this is how it's looking. It's actually looking wet than average to the majority of the UK as well as Ireland. Into France, drier than average across Iberia. If we look at the upper heights of the of this model here for the same time frame, again, we can see here that we've got a slight neutral height field over particularly England, Wales, much of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and then into Central Europe here. So that's quite an interesting look. And if we look at the CFSV2 for the, let's have a look at the extended of the CFSV2 for the same period. Again, this takes out to Thursday the 19th of the month. We've got that slight, I say negative, not necessarily negative, but it's not really sure. It's as if it's trying to put in a trough over Central Europe, which is quite interesting. If we look at the precipitation for the next, this would be totals. In fact, it's only going to give us totals up to the 10-day period. Let's have a look at the temperatures of the model here. So let me just see. And again, it's only showing me the... let me see here if I can show you the ECM extended. And this is how it's looking for the month of July. So let's go back to the month of June. And yeah, I can kind of see why this is happening. With the MJO becoming more active in the maritime continent, this would suggest a bit of a positive NAO signal, more origin from the Azores and Iberia moving up towards the UK from the south, more negative heights to the north. In terms of the precipitation, this is how it would be looking for the month of June of the model. Wetter north, drier south of the UK, which again, I tend to agree with that. And if we look at the ECM or the CFSV2 control run for the month of June, is it going to give me that? No, it's not. So let's move on then. This is the CFSV2 here, sorry, for the month of June, precipitation-wise, and it's looking wetter north and south, slightly drier across much of Wales and the central swathe of England, which is quite interesting. So you have to obviously take these with a pinch of salt. But nevertheless, we are going to start to see the changes taking place through the course of this week. Make the most of these, sunny days, warm temperatures, especially the further west over the UK and Ireland you go. It's always cooler in exposure of that breeze, whether it's off the North Sea or the Irish Sea. But I want to show you the GFS up here for the jet stream. You can see a much more active jet becoming established over the United States as we move through the course of this week. Again, we've not had much influence of the Atlantic jet, but it looks as if the return of the westerlies is going to be very fitting as we move towards the end of this week, as we've got an active little arm of the jet moving across the southern United States during the course of Wednesday this week. And what happens is we start to see that jet becoming more extensive out of North America, out across the Atlantic. That's forcing the high then to return back to more its typical position for the time of the year between the Azores and Iberia. We've got lower pressure re-establishing across Greenland and Iceland, and a strengthening jet in between that is going to throw areas of low pressure our way as we move towards the late week and weekend period. If we look at the mean sea level pressure and precipitation, go back to the latter half of, bear with here, let's go back here through till about now, and what you're seeing is lower pressure becoming more established, running the top of this area of high pressure that's down to the south. And what we're going to see is areas of low pressure moving around the top of this high and into the UK one after another. But high pressure is going to try and exert more influence as we move towards the final days of the month, according to the GFS operation, at least anyway. So we'll need to keep an eye on this. We may start to see this high that gets re-established down towards the south, trying to build back north into the UK and Ireland as we move into the very closing stages of May. Looking at total precipitation then, all the way out to late Thursday. Again, very little in the way of rainfall. We are picking up more totals across the south of Ireland, southwestern England and Wales here, southwestern Scotland. Also, we do have a thunderstorm threat ongoing over the next 24 hours or so here. Some big downpours, but for the majority, not much in the way of rainfall or indeed cloud cover for that matter. But if you notice here, all the way out to the end of this working week, again, very little in the way of rainfall away from that southwest and northwest corners of England, parts of Wales, Ireland and Northern Ireland are starting to pick up and more in the way of rainfall. But the majority of eastern England, central England and northern portions of the UK seeing very little in the way of rain until we reach Saturday. And that is when things start to change. And then we've got more moisture coming in off the Atlantic as we move through the course of the weekend and in through next week. Lots of rainfall across the south of Europe continues, as you can see here. Let's have a quick look at the ECMWF then and see what it's indicating. So by the time we reach the end of Thursday, very little in the way of rainfall again. Looks as if the focus of the rain is actually going to be in the southeast corner as opposed to the GFSC in the southwest. So northwestern England, but particularly southwestern Scotland and Ireland and Northern Ireland is going to pick up in rainfall between now and the end of Thursday. And as we play through this loop, you can see that as we move into the day on Saturday, like the GFS, it looks as if Saturday is the day that we are going to see the majority of the country with some form of rain, picking up probably more than a millimetre in most places. And then the rain totals begin to mount up a wee bit across western-facing parts of the UK and Ireland as the Atlantic winds return once again, something that we just have not seen in quite some time. Eastern portions of both Scotland and England, if you notice off the GFS, or the ECM should I say, again, not a huge amount of rainfall to speak about between now and the 1st of June. Look at southern and southeastern areas of Europe picking up on pretty big rainfall totals. So that is that. Wanted to show you this also from Christian, quite an interesting tweet here that he released a few hours ago, talking about some potentials into the month of June. Now bear with me a little second here, and I'll try and find that tweet. It looks as if there's been new tweets updated since I last seen it. So this is actually the scenes higher elevations of Slovakia, in the past few days here. So some fairly significant amounts of snow for the middle of May 19th. In fact, this was earlier on today. Winter-like conditions, more typical of January than spring in some higher terrain of Slovakia, which is quite interesting. And this is an interesting one here. This is what I was going to show you, was the effects of the final warming within the stratosphere back in early March is ending with a more summery circulation over the northern hemisphere during the month of June. An increase in AAM, or angular momentum, is observed, although it remains negative, with a shift of the tropical convection over the Indian Ocean with an increase in the NAO index. So in other words, we may see that classic ridge building out of the Azores and Iberia northwards towards England and Wales, lower pressure up towards Iceland, a kind of classic early summer type synoptic pattern developing due to the downward propagation of this energy from the final warming within the stratosphere, because it looks as if the NAO and the possibly the AO as well is trying to go negative, and there is some complications in terms of the overall pattern as we move into the month of June. But nevertheless, keeping an eye out. This is the NAO, by the way, and it's going from firmly positive to negative, and that is going to be quite interesting to see what happens. Finally, looking at the ERMAS chart and distribution of the ECMWF. Let's have a quick look, and then I will round things up there. We've got this little slice of cooler air coming in off the near continent, increasing the chance of thunderstorm activity and heavy downpours, for example, across parts of southern Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland, through the course of today. Continuing to play through this loop, you can see here that with high pressure trying to build northwards, albeit it's going back towards the south, there is a colder air that is seen by the models to try and come south towards the middle and second half of next week. We'll need to keep an eye on that. And then there's also an opportunity as low pressure starts to wind up to the west of the UK and Ireland that may even try and draw up some pretty warm air as well. So this is a time of the year that can be quite complex. It can be quite difficult to pinpoint the movement of air masses at this time of the year. And certainly with changes taking place within the stratosphere, down into the troposphere, over the Arctic region, the eastward progress of the convection over the Indian Ocean towards the maritime continent, it's quite a complex thing to try and take hold of. But you can see how we're flirting with some very, very warm air into Iberia, up into France towards the end of the month. But before we get there, it looks as if there's Arctic air trying to move southwards as well. So you can understand why it can be quite difficult to pinpoint a particular pattern as we move out of May and begin the opening of the summer and the month of June. So stay tuned. Hope you're enjoying the content here on the channel. Lots more to come this week. So I'll see you next time with more. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Bye-bye.